Hello, everyone. My bun is messy, but it's okay because it is 1 o'clock in the morning, and this is my review for Being Mary Jane. But let's get a little bit more energy. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I am Jay Lee. This is Jay Lee's Corner, and this is my review for Being Mary Jane, Season 4, Episode 18, Feeling Destined. Y'all know I have a love-hate relationship with this TV show as well as a few other shows. I feel like this. I'm going to need Mary Jane to get into a successful relationship. I'm going to need it to not be any more bullshit within relationship things. Like, her and Michael Ealy's character, her and Justin, I'm gonna need them to stick it out through the long run. I know the next episode is the season finale because we're getting ready for the fall shows. Yes, can't wait for the fall shows. But I just don't want, because every season she had a new guy, and my thing is, you know what I'm saying? I'm tired of that premise. Like, she needs to eventually get it right, and I just need the bullshit to stop. So, the episode starts off with, it's like a scene from back in the day, and the phone's ringing, and a young Mary Jane answers it, and she's like, nobody's there on the phone, and she hangs up. Then it comes to current times, and the same thing is happening, and Paul looking at the phone like, I know this Frank monkey ass calling for Helen, but Helen ass ain't here. And so the phone stops ringing, and then it rings again. So Paul pick up like, she ain't here no more, Frank, so stop calling my damn phone. Click. And because I'm like, he knows that's the little overplay for the underlay to let Helen know he calling. And, the phone then rings again. I told you stop calling here. And it's actually Mary Jane calling like, Dad, what's wrong with you? Why are you so, wound up? He like, oh, these prank callers keep calling, so it's getting on my nerve. So, when that happens, she's like, well, I'm calling because, y'all coming to New York to be on the show, to do the little cooking segment thing. You didn't forget. And he's like, no, we good, we packed. Your mama got a bag packed by the door. He lying. But we know now that Mary Jane don't know yet that her parents are having issues. So she's like, okay, well, I'll see y'all when y'all get here. The next thing we see is Frank go to see Helen at her hotel room because now he know that she not at the house no more. So she go, but I'm still wondering, how the hell did he find her? Is it only one hotel in Atlanta that they go to? Because if somebody call me and somebody say Jelly not here, nobody gonna know what hotel I'm at because we have so many hotels in Michigan. And unless you call every single hotel, how did you find her? But, this is TV, so whatsoever. So he like, why don't you tell me? She's like, I just needed some time, Frank. I need some time to myself just to think, Frank. And he like, look, I love you. I want to be with you, basically. I want you to come to New Orleans with me. And she like, New Orleans? And the funny part about that was I realized people from New Orleans say New Orleans. People who are not from there say New Orleans. I think the only reason I say New Orleans is because I watched another vlog family and they lived in New Orleans. And that's how they pronounced it. So I'm like, I know when you're not from there, you say New Orleans. So, yeah. Anywho, so she's like, I don't know about that. It's a lot going on. I need time to think. I have to go to New York to see Pauletta. We got to be there for Pauletta. So he like, well, look, go on out to New York. Do what you got to do with your daughter. And when you come back, let's just talk about us, and you coming with me to New Orleans. So she like, all right, we can talk when I get back. We then see a little scene where Orlando was telling Kara that the anchoring job that he was trying to get, that he actually did get. So they're happy. But he's like, dang, you won't be my producer no more. I won't be able to work with Garrett. It'll be cool if I can get him to do it, to work with me. And she was like, yeah, maybe he would, we can see if we can get him to leave where he is now to be with you. And then I can get his job. So we see that, and everything is starting to be the start of a conversation and the start of a scene. Next, we see Helen comes home to Paul's house. It's her and Paul's house because they're supposed to be catching this flight together to New York for this whole family thing. And so when she get in there, and she like, so you all packing, you all ready? And he's like, no, I forgot, so I'm not packing. And she was like, well, if you would have answered my calls, then you would have knew I could have reminded you. I'm like, go ahead, Helen. Let that man know he could still answer your calls. But he shouldn't, because your ass cheated on him. So, don't get too fresh. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, Sugar Avery. She's like, I'll fine. I'll go pack your bags. I don't need you to pack my bags. I can do it myself. Meaning, don't touch my shit. I'm still mad at you. And she's like, well, we need to talk first. We need to talk to Paul. We need to talk to Patrick about all of this. And he was like, we've rocked him to his core. We've rocked his whole world. So we do have to talk about it. And as they're saying that, no, because even Paul said we shouldn't even be going to New York. You know what I'm saying? They're going to see right through this. They're going to see right through this, and, we shouldn't go. And she's like, we can't let Pauletta down. She's, the only black anchor there. We can't have her be the only anchor whose family don't show up, so we have to go. And that's when she said, but we need to talk to Paul. Damn it. Why can't I think of his name? Patrick. Duh, Jay Lee. We need to talk to Patrick. So as they're saying that, Patrick is walking in, and they're like, hey, he like, oh, so y'all still going to New York, huh? Mary Jane gonna see right through this bullshit. And she's like, you watch your mouth when you in this house. Boy, I don't care how mad you is at me. She put his ass in his place. Don't you cuss in your mama's house. You don't do that. I never cuss in my mama's house. For me to cuss in my mama's house, someone has to be pissing me off and make my mama mad. Then I go off on their ass, okay? But you don't cuss in your parents' house. So, they're like, but forget about that. My arm is itching like crazy. My tattoo keeps itching. But he like, they're like, but how are you doing? And he was like, don't worry about me. I'm good. Y'all just go ahead on with this farce and you go do whatever you're going to do. And, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. And he walks away. So, yeah. We next see, Mary Jane is texting Justin, and she's saying, hey, these are things you can't talk about when my parents get when you meet my parents. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna make it back. And she's like, what? Why? I thought your flight, will be leaving in a couple hours. And he's like, no, something else happened here. So Garrett asked me to stay a little bit, a few more days to cover the story. So of course she's depressed, and she puts not depressed, she's sad. So she puts a couple smiley face texts back to him. So her mom gets to her house, like, hey, Pauletta. And she come in with her luggage and everything. So she like, Mom, where's that? And why don't you leave your luggage at the hotel? And she's like, oh, well, I brought it with me because, the hotel, your producers didn't book 2 rooms, so I just brought it back with me. She's like, well, they booked 2 rooms. You and Dad were fighting or whatever. And she's like, not really. And she's like, what's going on? She was like, well, your father asked me for a divorce, and I decided to give it to him. I'm looking like, that's how you gonna tell her? Like, just out the blue like that, Helen? You gonna just flat out? So, of course, Mary Jane looks shocked, and it's kind of crazy. So it goes on commercial, of course. So the next scene is Kara and Mary Jane talking. And Mary Jane like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And Kara like, oh my God, I can't believe your mom cheated on your dad. And she's like, yeah, and Patrick isn't my dad's child. And it's this whole thing. Because she basically told Kara everything. And they're like, I just can't believe it. Mary Jane even said, I feel like I'm the one to blame for it. I just feel like, Frank is her addiction. And look at me, I broke up with Lee to be with Justin. I feel like me doing that had my mom fall off the wagon. Meaning my mom saw me leave a comfortable situation with Lee. I was happy with Lee. But Justin was my addiction. So I left the comfort to go to my addiction. And I feel like because I did that, she did that. So is it my fault? And Kara like, girl, bye. Y'all 2 adult women, what your mama did don't have nothing to do with what you did. And what you did don't have nothing to do with what your mama did. I agree with that because you are not your parents' mistakes. We then see that Helen, my hair is, I can't wait to take my hair out and just go to sleep. We see that Helen calls Frank now that she is in New York, now that, she kind of knows Patrick is okay, now that Mary Jane knows, and she's like, I lied to you, Frank, all those years ago. And he's like, what you talking about? And she was like, Patrick is your son. When I told you about my oldest son years ago, he's actually your son. I just didn't tell you. You know, back then it was the South. I was a young black pregnant girl. It was just not a good time. And he was like, and so you married. That's why you and Paul got married so fast. And she was like, well, yeah, I wanted my son to have a good father, and I knew he fancied me. I'm like, he fancied you? That's a good old school word. So she was like, so I guess, you don't want to be with me anymore. Not, I lied to you. And he was like, no, it makes me even want to be with you even more. We have a son. We have a son together. Like, you can really come with me and live with, come to me and be in New Orleans. I'm like, why he keep trying to get you to move across the country to be goddamn New Orleans? I mean, calm down, Frank. So, next we see that Mary Jane gets a call from her doctor's office because, remember, her and Lee were going to try to have kids. So they had the 2 embryos that were basically ready to go, I'll say. So the doctor's office called, like, okay, are you and Lee coming down here today? We have to talk about it first. And she's like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that. That was supposed to be today. And she's like, well, you guys still coming? She's like, well, me and Lee actually broke up. And she's like, oh, what do y'all want to do with the embryos? And she was like, oh, we didn't discuss that. It was kind of a sudden thing. I don't know. She's like, we'll contact Lee and we'll just call you back. So we see that scene or whatever. The next thing we see is Mary Jane and her parents are finally in the same room in front of her. And, Helen acting normal. Helen like, oh, it was such a great thing to be here. And we so happy for you, Paulette. And we happy to have this whole family segment so people can see your family and blah, blah. She acting real normal. And Paul over there just stewing. Like, he like she acting so fake. She been fake her whole life. But now she going to be fake on TV. And, so they're all saying, though, how they've been trying to contact Paul. I mean, they've been trying to contact Patrick, but no one has been able to get in contact with him. They've called him and texted him within that day, and he hasn't responded back. Of course, because he's pissed off, so he don't want to talk to nobody. So, we see that Paul is actually at an AA or NA, either Alcohol Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous meeting because he's having issues that he doesn't want to relapse. So at the end of the meeting, who do we see show up? Here comes Frank. Now, Frank, you done found Helen at the hotel. Now you done found Frank. You done found Patrick at the dang old AA, NA meeting. So he like, Patrick. And I'm like, how you know that's Patrick? Was it because he was the only black man there? Trying to run it. Anywho, so he like, I know it's weird for me to pop up like this, but I thought we should talk. And he's like, oh, you Frank, so, you thought it would be cool to, walk up with me like that? He's like, well, yeah, I just wanted to talk to you, kind of get some things straight. We can go talk. And he's like, well, I'm not no young kid. I don't need no pep talk. He's like, well, and neither do I. I just want to talk. And he was like, your mom gave up your location. And he was like, yeah, she seems to think that, she's exempt from following the rules. He's like, don't be too mad with your mama, but, I don't think we should talk. So Patrick agrees to go talk to him. Now back to Mary Jane and the mama and daddy. They about to go on air, and they like, Mary Jane, it's emergency in green room, whatever, number 1. They go in the door, man. Paul and Helen ass going at it. I can't believe you would tell Paul. Why would you tell Patrick? And we gonna ruin this for Mary Jane and for Paulette and going back. And then it was crazy because then she was like, "You're driving me crazy, Paul." And she picks up like a mug and she lunges it towards him, and it shatters on the wall. And Mary Jane and Carl like, oh my God! So they quickly close the door so no one can hear them arguing. And Kara's like, they can't go on camera like that. Your parents can't go on camera. And Mary Jane is just like in shock because she's hearing her parents argue how she used to hear them argue when she was little. So yeah. I think that was... So the next thing after that, we see Helen coming out of the room crying. And Kara's like, your dad has to do the segment by himself. Your mom can't go on camera like that. So we're going to need your dad to go on in segment. He does the segment, and he's talking about his famous barbecue sauce. And, she's like, my dad's famous barbecue sauce. I've never been able to recreate it. Dad, how did you come up with this? And he was like, well, when we were younger, we were a young, poor couple, and we were trying to feed the kids. So I would just, make stuff to feed everybody. And he was like, I just kind of came up with the sauce. And then he was kind of stirring it and thinking. And he was like, well, you know what? That's not quite true. He was like, actually, I did make the sauce, but your mama, my wife, she would come and she would add a little bit of this, add a little bit of that, add this and add that. And he was like, so her adding her own ingredients is what made my sauce so special. And I couldn't imagine making my sauce without her. Come through, Paul. Come through with the dang on analogies. Yes, come on. So as he's talking, Helen is watching from the green room or whatever. So she sees and he sounded very genuine. It wasn't a thing even trying to fake it for the cameras. It was an honest moment because as he was stirring, I think he was thinking like, wait a minute, that ain't the truth. She was adding this and she was adding that. And her adding this made this sauce special. Just like I love. Yep. Just like they dang on love. So, Mary Jane, you did a really good job. I'm so happy about that. You and Mom should talk. Y'all should have a conversation. Y'all been together so long. Y'all owe each other enough to have a conversation before y'all go through with this divorce. And he like, we've been talking forever, but I will talk to her because I shouldn't have pushed her so hard today to where she didn't want to do, the interviews. And he then says, I'm just hurt after all these years that, in her eyes, I'm still not enough. I'm looking like, damn. In his old age, he feel like his wife think he not enough. In all these years, that's what he thought. So, yeah. We then see Kara talking to Garrett and kind of putting a bug in his ear that, Orlando's going to retire. It's not out yet. He's going to get this show and, we're going to have him break his retirement on here. Blah, 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 blah. So she puts that bug in his ear. Hold that for later. So we see Patrick and Frank talking. And, Frank is basically telling Patrick, you can't be mad at your mother. Back in the day, I wasn't a good person. I was on drugs. I was an alcoholic. I would not have made a good father. And he was like, even though I did not know about you, had she told me she was pregnant, I probably would have still left. And he was like, because your mama did ask me to stay. She gave me an ultimatum saying, you either can choose the bottle or me. And he was like, and what happened? He was like, I did what any other alcoholic would do. I chose drinking. And Pat was like, you know what? I completely understand that. He then says how he wished he could have had someone who understood his struggles when he was younger. Meaning, I wish you as my father could have been around in some aspect to let me know about your troubles drinking and drugging, because he had now been sober for 20 years. So yeah, 20 years ago, Patrick could have used, that help or whatever, but he didn't get it. Then he goes on to say, your mama got with your daddy because he was a good man. He loved your mama. He loved you, and he was a good father. She picked him because he was better than me. I'm like, come through, Frank. Tell the truth. Sometimes people who it's hard to know that your father, or you thought your father, is not your father. But I think because it hurt you, you don't think of why it was done. Because the thing is, think about what if your mama would have chose that alcoholic and that drug addict. Your life could have been, you could have still been a drug addict yourself, but it could have just drugged the whole family down. You also would not have had your siblings. Sometimes we as children have to understand the choices our parents made could have helped us. Not always, but sometimes it can. So we next see that MJ goes to the doctor, and they're like, Lee didn't come. We did talk to him, and he doesn't want to go through with you being implanted with the fertilized eggs, because it's her eggs and his sperm. And she's like, so there are three options. You can donate the eggs to someone else. You can donate the eggs to for research, or you can basically dispose of them. And she was just like, because it's the equivalent of saying you have to kill your children, because again, they're fertilized eggs, so those are in hindsight her kids. So she's processing what she's saying, and she's like, Lee has already signed the forms and sent the forms over to be signed. to have them destroyed, but you both have to agree to have them destroyed. At that point, I'm looking like, damn. Because he said to her, you would make a horrible mother. So that was another nail in the coffin. You would make such a horrible mother that even if I'm not in your life, I'm not going to help you procreate because you was that much of a bad person. And she's crying and everything. And she's like, can you repeat that? And she was like, just sign here to dispose of the 2 embryos that they fertilized together. She then says, you still have 2 viable eggs that we can keep stored for you if you want. And she's like, yeah, and I also want to discuss sperm donors. So, she's having that whole conversation. From there, she's going home. Her mom's like, where have you been? I've been looking for you. Where have you been? And she's like, well, I was basically at the doctor's office flushing down, flushing your grandchildren down the toilet. And she's like, what? And she was like, yeah, me and Lee were going to be inseminated. It didn't work out, so he wanted to terminate him. So I had to basically kill him. And she kind of went off on her mother, just saying how she feels like she herself sabotages her own relationship. That's what she's done her whole life, and she feels like her mother is the reason for that she's learned it from her mother. She's like, I can recall you and Dad fighting when we were younger, and now I realize that you guys were fighting about Frank. Frank has always been an issue. She's like, but I thought, she's like, I left Lee, who was a perfectly good man who loved me. I left him. I sabotaged that relationship to get with Justin. The same as you are doing with Dad and Frank. It's a repetitive cycle. She's like, but I thought you were happy with Justin, baby. I am happy with Justin. She was like, but I'm probably just going to sabotage that one too because that's just what I do. I was just at the doctor's office picking a sperm donor even though I have a boyfriend. And I'm probably doing that because I'm probably going to sabotage me and Justin. So for me, it's a backup plan. I keep doing the same thing that you did too. And she was like, why wasn't that enough? And her mom was like, well, probably the same reason that Lee wasn't enough. And I think Mary Jane is seeing it from a daughter's perspective and not from a woman's perspective. And that's the hard part, that when you become an adult and you have to be an adult with your parents and their situations, is very, very difficult. Because you kind of, you love your parent, but even though I thought Mary Jane was a little bit disrespectful when she kept on cutting my mom off. You can't, that ain't what you do. Anywho, her mom was saying, the same reason that Lee wasn't, she then said, I just never trusted the slow burn that your father gave me. I wanted that fire that Frank gave me, and that was my addiction. She was like, oh, so you basically just kept pushing Dad away all this time, trying to see how much he would take, and you did it until he couldn't take anymore, and this is where you guys are now. And she was like, that's what I've done with all my relationships. And then she kind of just left, and I was like, damn, okay, Mary Jane is just kind of pissed off. So the next thing we see is Helen and Paul having a conversation, because Mary Jane suggested Dad talk to Mom. And it was a good conversation. Paul apologized for pushing Helen at the show, pushing her buttons, making them argue, and getting her so riled up that she couldn't emotionally go on the set and do the show. My light broken, so I hope it don't go off before I'm done recording this video. It's my lamp. The bulb might just blow or whatever. Helen then said that she's sorry for pushing Frank their whole relationship. She kept pushing and pushing and pushing to see if he would leave her or if he would come back. And she says she's sorry for that. How she wants the hurt to stop. She also says how she really loves Paul. Because Paul is like, did you ever, you've been in love with Frank all these years. And she was like, no, when I committed to you, I was deeply and madly in love with you. I really was. I was the cause of our problems. It had nothing to do with anybody else. It was all me. That was well enough for her to admit that. And she's like, but I stayed because I was deeply in love with you. I don't want to be with Frank now. I'm not going to be with Frank now. And he was like, I accept your apology, but I still want a divorce. Come through, Paul. Let her, because my thing is, she still did wrong. Even though she's admitting what she did wrong, she's been doing wrong their whole marriage. So their marriage hasn't been a lie, But at the same time, it hasn't been 100% honest. And he wants a divorce. Now, I'm surprised, no, I'm not, because people get divorces every day. So, yeah. But yeah, I was like, okay, he like, you know what I'm saying? I accept your apology. I'm happy that you are telling me that you loved me and that it was never a thing that you did not love me. But I can't stay in this farce of a marriage solely because the minute he came in town, you went and gave him some Sugar Avery coochie. You was out here sharing your coochie, K Sugar Avery, out here giving Frank your cootie cat, Helen, and that one fair to Paul. You know what I'm saying? You should have left Paul and then gave Frank your cootie cat. Then the bad part about it is you gonna give Frank some cootie cat and still not leave your husband. I feel like this: if you gonna blow up your life and blow up your marriage, at least do it for a reason. You know what I'm saying? But maybe she's doing it just to be by herself. So we then see Patrick goes to see Frank at his hotel because I guess he's been calling him and he hasn't been getting through. And Frank is like, "Yeah, your mama called me about an hour ago. I can hear in her voice. I know now that me and her will not be together. Before it was always some flicker of hope, something that I was like, we may be able to still stay together." And he was like, not this time. And Patrick was like, "Do you need to come with me to a meeting?" And he was like, "No, I know how to work the program. I never works for me." And you hear somebody say, "Hey, Frank, baby, come back to bed." I'm like, Frank in there getting some old cootie cat again? Frank, where you getting these people from? Because you're not even from Atlanta. You are from New Orleans. So where you get some cootie cat from? Where it come from? Is it a prostitute? Is there old prostitutes? Was Frank with an old prostitute? Man, look. I'm sorry. Sometimes I just start going. Anywho, but yeah, he just kind of said, don't be mad at your mom. You can't be mad at your father either. They did what was best for you, and you need to accept that. So the next thing is we see, that lamp's gonna drive me crazy. MJ and Patrick are having a conversation, and the conversation was basically like this. They know what happened. Patrick feel like, are we really siblings? Yes, we are. Hold on. Damn it. Lamp, they want me to be, my lamp trying to stop me from being great. Damn it. Anywho, Patrick and Mary Jane were talking. Basically, Patrick was saying, how he feels weird about they don't have the same parents. And she's like, "Look, I don't care if we don't have the same mom and dad. You are my brother. You've been my brother for 40 years, and that ain't gonna change." Say that shit. And he's just in how it's difficult to understand how they have to tell their other sibling. I can't remember what his name is. The other sibling, like, oh, he gonna freak out. Mary Jane just goes on to say, she knows that they have problems, and their problems are not their parents' fault. But not addressing their issues is a family dynamic that needs to change. Meaning, your drug addiction, me sabotaging relationships, and my men issues have nothing to do with mom and dad's issues. They're our own issues. The reason they continue to be an issue is because we don't address them. We just kind of sweep them under the rug, and we don't talk about them in public, and that's the whole reason of it. So yeah, we see next that Garrett gets the promotion. Garrett doesn't go to the. Oh, damn it. Garrett doesn't go where Orlando's going because GSN, or whatever the name of their company, is hearing that he might leave. They promote him, which is still good for Kira because his position will still be open, and she feel like, it's hers. The last of the show, we see MJ talking to her mom, and her mom is basically saying, I'm gonna take some time for me, because Mary Jane, like, she's gonna go back to Atlanta and stay at the hotel, and she's like, I'm gonna take some time for me, Pauletta. I haven't had time for me in forever, so I'm gonna take time and just be to myself. She then tells Pauletta, my advice to you is go get your man. Meaning, go get Justin. If that's who you love, if that's who you want to be with, don't make my same mistakes and, fuck it up 40 years down the line. Go get your man right now, girl. Go get him. So, we then see Kara telling Mary Jane that she finally booked the primetime guest of all primetime guests. She's like, who, Beyonce? And she's like, no, bigger than Beyonce. It's like, well, who the fuck is bigger than Beyonce? Mrs. Michelle Obama. I'm wondering if this is, if Michelle Obama's on next week, I'm like, Mary, Michelle, you doing TV shows now? Go ahead, girl. Yes, girl, Black Girl Magic. So next we see, you know, Mary Jane is happy. So her and Carrie doing a whole little happy because, you know, doing a primetime interview with I was saying Mary J. Blige with Michelle Obama is huge. She's like, I'm gonna be the Black Barbara Walters, yes! And she's very, very, very happy. The last scene that we see is Mary Jane texting Justin to say, hey, I miss you. I want to see you. I'm getting on the flight to Paris. I'll be there shortly. And so she sends a text, and he quickly responds. He was like, you know, no, there's no need to do that. I'm like, oh my God, is he breaking up with her? And then he says, my flight lands in a couple hours. I was going to surprise you. I'll be home to see you. And I'm looking like, aw. And she's happy, and everybody's happy. And it's a whole little thing. So, you know, it was a good episode. I did like it. You know, it's a lot of stuff going on. You know, her parents actually getting divorced. Her brother is actually her half-brother. But, so her brother, you know what I'm saying? You can't really believe in labels. She's getting a great primetime interview. Her boyfriend is coming back. You know, her best friend, Kara, could possibly be getting a promotion. You know, it's good all around the board. You know, her father knows that his wife did love him. And that, you know, she wasn't pining after Frank all these years. That's a good thing. You know, so it was, you know, even Patrick knowing the truth about who his father is, but also knowing the reason why his mom made that decision when she did. So, you know, everything kind of came full circle. So, that's my review for Being Mary Jane. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys next week for the season finale. Remember to like my videos, share my videos, look at the other videos, you know what I'm saying? Browse around on J. Lee's Corner. Until next time, people.